Helena Blavatsky's occult prophecies. Her controversial predictions are coming true in 2025. We're about to step into the hidden world of Helena Blavatsky's prophecies, messages once dismissed as fantasy, now eerily aligning with the events of 2025. What did this mysterious woman truly foresee about our future, and why are her most controversial predictions suddenly coming alive? Blavatsky spoke of a spiritual crisis, a time when humanity would chase progress and power, forgetting the soul. She warned that without inner awakening, even the most advanced civilizations would crumble from within. But who buried her message, and why is it resurfacing now? Modern man's intellect has grown, but his heart has withered. Progress without wisdom is the road to ruin. As we face growing division, ecological breakdown, and the seductive promises of AI, Blavatsky's warnings feel less like mystical tales and more like a mirror reflecting our current path. Welcome to The Journey of Wisdom, where we'll explore what these occult prophecies mean for our time and how they challenge us to rethink everything we believe about truth, destiny, and human evolution. Number 1. Who was Madame Blavatsky? Though history remembers Helena Petrovna Blavatsky through conflicting lenses, her legacy continues to stir deep reflection, especially today as spiritual seekers grapple with rapid global change. Some dismissed her as a fraud, accusing her of staging miracles and borrowing heavily from older traditions. But to many others, she was a revolutionary voice who dared to unify the mystical wisdom of the East with the scientific curiosity of the West. Born into Russian aristocracy in 1831, Blavatsky defied the roles assigned to women of her class and time. Rather than conform to societal expectations, she broke free from an arranged marriage at the age of 17 and disappeared into a decades-long spiritual journey that spanned the Himalayan ranges, the temples of India and Egypt, and the spiritual communities of the Americas. During this odyssey, she claimed to have been trained by enlightened teachers in Tibetan masters who revealed to her the laws of karma, cycles of reincarnation, and the subtle energies that govern both the cosmos and the soul. These teachings would later form the bedrock of what she co-founded in 1875, the Theosophical Society, with a bold aim to explore the mysteries of life and awaken the deeper potential within humanity. Blavatsky was not content to simply collect wisdom. She wielded it like a torch in the dark corners of a world dominated by colonial exploitation, rigid religion, and materialist science. Living for many years in India during the height of British rule, she openly criticized imperial powers for stripping ancient cultures of their dignity and wisdom. In her writings, she mourned not only the looting of material treasures, but the theft of spiritual heritage, arguing that sacred texts like the Vedas contained the remedies modern society desperately needed. This voice of resistance made her both admired and dangerous, especially as she stood with marginalized communities like the Dravidians, honoring their ancient knowledge while colonial rulers dismissed it as primitive. Today, as many around the world seek to reconnect with indigenous traditions and ancestral knowledge, Blavatsky's stance resonates with renewed urgency. Her critiques of science were no less radical. While Darwin's theory of evolution was reshaping biology, Blavatsky offered a different view, where life's development was not accidental but spiritually guided. In her monumental work, The Secret Doctrine, she argued that matter itself was alive with divine potential and that evolution was the soul's journey through form, not merely biology adapting to environment. At the time, this was heresy. Yet, in an age now flirting with quantum mechanics and consciousness studies, her idea that all existence is interconnected and purposeful seems far less far-fetched. Her vision of a universe where energy, intention, and spiritual law govern all things is finding subtle echoes in modern theories that blend science with philosophy. The Theosophical Society quickly became a global movement, drawing minds such as Edison and Bell, who saw in its principles something both futuristic and eternal. Its core values universal brotherhood, comparative religion, and the exploration of psychic and spiritual law spoke to the loneliness and mechanization of the industrial age. These ideas continue to speak to us now, as people increasingly search for connection, meaning, and wholeness in a world that often feels fragmented. In a time when burnout, disconnection, and political division dominate headlines, Blavatsky's insistence on spiritual unity and the deeper layers of reality offers more than curiosity, offers a path toward healing. Perhaps her most enduring influence lies in the way she bridged worlds, long before terms like chakra or karma entered everyday vocabulary. She was already weaving them into Western thought. Through works like The Voice of the Silence, she not only shared esoteric concepts, but gave poetic, practical guidance to those seeking inner transformation. Her famous phrase, "The mind is the slayer of the real," still echoes today for anyone caught in overthinking or emotional unrest. Her teachings invite us to go beyond surface appearances, beyond fear and illusion, and touch the deeper currents of being. Artists, writers, and thinkers found inspiration in her vision, and her legacy lives on in both spiritual movements and the growing public fascination with consciousness. Number 2. Her warnings and prophecies. 1. Environmental collapse. Let's take a closer look at one of Helena Blavatsky's most powerful and haunting prophecies: the environmental collapse of the Earth, not just as a scientific phenomenon, but as a deep spiritual crisis. In an 1886 letter to her colleague A.P. Sinnett, she wrote, "The West worships its machines, but starves its soul." Now pause for a moment. What does that really mean? Blavatsky wasn't simply criticizing industrial machines or modern conveniences. She was speaking to something deeper, something we still face today: the way our obsession with technology and material progress has dulled our sense of inner purpose and sacred connection to the world around us. When she observed the Industrial Revolution, she didn't just see steam engines and factories. She saw smoke covering the skies of London, the sacred lands of India being torn apart by railroads, and science stripping away the mystery of life, reducing the universe to particles and cold calculations. In her seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky boldly declared, "Materialism is the true original Sina veil that blinds humanity to its divine nature." Have we lost something essential in our rush to conquer the material world? That's the question she forces us to ask. For Blavatsky, materialism wasn't just a personal problem. It was a civilization-wide disease, one that leads not just to spiritual poverty, but to real-world catastrophe. In Lucifer Magazine name, she chose deliberately to symbolize enlightenment, not evil. She warned that if humanity continued to place profit above life, nature itself would begin to retaliate. Rivers will choke on the filth of greed, forests will crumble to feed furnaces, and the air itself will carry the stench of decay. These were not just poetic words, they were a call to wake up. Doesn't this sound strikingly familiar to the world we live in today? From poisoned rivers and dying forests, to polluted skies and an unstable climate, Blavatsky's words echo louder than ever. She foresaw a future in which ecological destruction was not only a scientific concern, but a karmic consequence, spiritual backlash to humanity's arrogance. She believed the earth was not a lifeless rock, but a living, breathing being, a sacred entity in her own right. In The Secret Doctrine, she wrote, "To wound the earth is to wound the divine. The karma of each site will haunt humanity for aeons." What does this mean for us now, living in an age of rising seas, vanishing species, and chaotic weather? Could it be that our environmental crisis is not just a physical problem, but also a spiritual one? Blavatsky challenges us to see the Earth not as a resource to be exploited, but as a sacred relationship to be honored. What would change in our behavior if we truly believed that harming the planet is the same as harming our own soul? Her teachings push us to consider, is the collapse we're witnessing around us also a reflection of the collapse within us? When we disconnect from nature, from spirit, and from one another, the outer world starts to mirror that inner emptiness. And yet, she didn't speak these warnings to inspire fear. She spoke them to spark transformation. If karma is real, then so is redemption. The spiritual path, as she envisioned it, was not about denial or escape, but about responsibility and renewal. Blavatsky reminds us that healing the earth begins with healing ourselves. She saw humanity as a bridge between the material and the divine, with the potential to uplift or destroy, to harmonize or disrupt. And the choice, she said, has always been ours. So, ask yourself, in your daily life, how do you interact with the world around you? Are your actions guided by awareness, compassion, and balance, or by convenience and short-term gain? What might it look like to live in a way that honors the earth as sacred? These are not just philosophical questions, they are calls to action. And as 2025 a year some believe is the culmination of karmic cycles, we are being asked to decide what kind of future we truly want to create. So what can we learn from Blavatsky's prophecy today? First, that material progress without spiritual wisdom leads to imbalance and suffering. Second, that our planet is not separate from it is an extension of our collective consciousness. And finally, that true change begins within. If we want to stop environmental collapse, we must first stop the inner collapse, the disconnection from meaning, mindfulness, and love. Let Blavatsky's warning not be a prophecy fulfilled in ruin, but a wake-up call that stirs the spirit. Because the future is not fixed, it's shaped by every choice we make, starting right now. 2. Rise of soulless technology. Let's talk about something that sounds like it was taken straight out of today's headlines, but was actually predicted over a century ago. Helena Blavatsky, a mystic and philosopher from the 19th century, made a series of bold and controversial predictions, and one of them stands out now more than ever: the rise of what she called soulless technology. At a time when steam engines were still considered cutting edge, Blavatsky looked ahead and warned of a future where machines would not only think, but would do so without any trace of compassion, empathy, or moral understanding. In an essay written in 1888, she wrote something chilling: "Man will create machines that think but lack compassion. These mechanical demons will enslave their creators, for they know nothing of love, justice, or mercy." Take a moment and think about that. Doesn't that echo the conversations we're having today around artificial intelligence, automation, and the growing power of technology in our lives? She was talking about machines that could process information, make decisions, and even outperform humans in some areas, but without a soul, without conscience, without the very qualities that make us human. Blavatsky wasn't simply being dramatic. She was deeply concerned about where humanity's obsession with intellect and control could lead. She feared that by pouring our energy into building powerful machines and systems, we might lose touch with what truly matters: her capacity for love, for kindness, and for spiritual growth. And now, in the 21st century, we're watching that prediction begin to unfold. We have machines that can write poetry, diagnose diseases, and drive cars. But the big question remains: can they care? Can they understand suffering? Can they make moral choices in the way a human heart can? If you've ever wondered whether technology might one day dominate human life, or if you've felt uneasy about how fast things are changing, you're not alone. Blavatsky saw this as a crucial turning point. If we hand over too much control to emotionless systems, what happens to our soul? Her vision invites us to reflect deeply on what kind of future we are building. Are we creating tools to uplift and liberate humanity? Are we paving the way for our own spiritual disconnection? Think about your own daily life. How much of your time, attention, and even decision-making has been influenced by algorithms, devices, and digital systems? And more importantly, how often do those technologies help you grow as a person or simply distract, control, or isolate you? Blavatsky's message is not anti-technology. It's a warning against forgetting who we are in the process of building powerful tools. It's a reminder that intelligence without wisdom and power without compassion can easily become dangerous. Her fears echo in the work of modern thinkers like Yuval Noah Harari, who also speak about the risks of artificial intelligence evolving faster than our ethical frameworks can keep up. So the question becomes, how do we stay human in an increasingly automated world? Can we create technologies that serve the heart as well as the mind? Can we design systems that reflect our highest values, not just our efficiency goals? Blavatsky would say this is not just a technological dilemma, it's a spiritual test. And in this test, the answer doesn't lie in shutting down innovation, but in awakening our inner awareness, staying connected to what is real, and ensuring that as machines grow smarter, we grow wiser. The true danger isn't that AI will destroy us, but that we might forget ourselves while relying on it. If Blavatsky's prophecy is unfolding in our time, then the most urgent task is to bring the soul back into the conversation. What kind of future are we choosing, and are we awake enough to guide it with love, justice, and mercy? Are you starting to see the pieces come together? Helena Blavatsky's predictions aren't just history, they're becoming reality. Type "I see the signs" in the comments if you feel the truth emerging. Stick around till the end. What comes next may surprise you. 3. Spiritual crisis. One of Helena Blavatsky's most profound and urgent prophecies speaks to what she called a coming spiritual crisis, a time when religion, once a guiding force for human connection and inner growth, would become hollow, reduced to rituals without depth or genuine meaning. She warned that in the age to come, truth will shift from temples to science and the heart, a statement that invites us to reflect deeply on what spirituality means in today's fast-moving, hyper-connected world. Many of us, especially between the ages of 30 and 65, have witnessed this shift firsthand. The traditional institutions that once gave us comfort now often feel disconnected from daily life. People are walking away from organized religion, not necessarily because they've stopped believing, but because they're searching for something more honest, more alive, and more personal. In this, Blavatsky saw both a danger and a possibility. The danger lies in the emptiness that follows when ritual becomes routine and belief becomes mechanical. As the Zen Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "It is not enough to recite the sutra, you must live it." In the same spirit, Blavatsky urged humanity not to discard spirituality, but to revive it by reconnecting with ancient wisdom, not just through study, but through direct, heartfelt experience. Blavatsky believed that the key to restoring balance in an increasingly chaotic world was not found in new ideologies, but in remembering what we already knew deep within the timeless truths preserved in ancient sacred knowledge. She saw that as the material world expanded and as science became the new authority, people would either reject spirituality altogether or seek shallow substitutes in trends and movements that lacked true substance. But to her, science and spirit were never meant to be enemies. Rather, she believed the future would demand a marriage between scientific understanding and inner awakening. This perspective is strikingly modern, as even contemporary physicists and thought leaders, such as Carl Jung and Fritjof Capra, have explored the intersection of consciousness, energy, and the universe. So ask yourself, where do you go to find meaning? Is your spiritual life something you experience deeply, or has it become a distant memory? And more importantly, what might it look like to reawaken it? This is not about returning to superstition or dogma, it's about rooting yourself in something greater, something that helps you stay grounded amidst uncertainty. In Buddhist philosophy, there's a powerful saying, "When the student is ready, the teacher appears." Perhaps these times of crisis, disconnection, and inner longing are the very conditions that make us ready. Ready to explore teachings that speak directly to the heart, that remind us of compassion, interdependence, and the sacredness of all life. Blavatsky's call to revive ancient wisdom wasn't nostalgia, was guidance. She saw that humanity was forgetting its purpose, trading spiritual insight for intellectual pride. Her warning echoes today, when stress, anxiety, and meaninglessness affect millions who seem to have everything yet feel empty inside. But we don't have to stay lost. The path forward, she believed, would emerge not in temples or textbooks alone, but through a sincere search within a path where the heart becomes the temple and everyday life becomes the sacred text. So, as you move through your day, ask yourself, what do I truly value? What nourishes my soul? And how can I return not to old forms, but to timeless truths that are waiting to be rediscovered? Because when science meets the heart, and when action is guided by wisdom, balance returns not just to our lives, but to the world around us. 4. Psychological, technological dangers. One of Helena Blavatsky's most unsettling predictions centers around the psychological and technological dangers she foresaw unfolding in the future, dangers that today, in 2025, feel more like current reality than distant prophecy. She warned of a world where human minds would no longer be free, where illusion would be used to manipulate thought, behavior, and even belief. Doesn't that sound familiar in an age where information is tailored, filtered, and algorithmically delivered to keep us scrolling, buying, and obeying? Blavatsky cautioned that mind control wouldn't come in the form of chains or prisons, but in subtle psychological traps, distraction, misinformation, and social manipulation designed to shape how people see themselves, each other, and the world. In this digital era where we're often more connected to screens than to one another, we have to ask, are we really free thinkers or just reacting to whatever the system feeds us? This question is essential if we want to protect our inner clarity and personal sovereignty. Blavatsky also expressed deep concern over what she foresaw as a misuse of science, especially in areas like genetic engineering. Not because she was against scientific discovery, but because she believed knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. What happens when we alter the building blocks of life without understanding the spiritual balance that life depends on? We're already seeing the debate unfold around gene editing, designer babies, and the ethical risks of tampering with nature's design. It's not about whether we can do it, it's about whether we should. When we remove compassion, responsibility, and humility from our technological progress, we risk creating more suffering, not less. And Blavatsky warned that the karma of these choices would not just affect individuals, it would echo across generations. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Wisdom is a living stream, not something you learn and leave behind. It's the light that guides right action." This principle reminds us that just because a technology exists doesn't mean it leads us toward truth or harmony, unless guided by deep moral awareness. And then there's the lure of virtual realities, which Blavatsky didn't name directly but described in concept long before they existed. She foresaw a time when people would retreat from real life, turning away from nature, spirit, and community in favor of artificial experiences. Today, we see this in the rise of digital avatars, immersive online spaces, and social platforms that feel more real than reality itself, for some. But what do we lose when we spend more time in these illusions than in the natural world or in the presence of loved ones? How often do we pause to feel the ground beneath our feet, the air on our skin, or the stillness of simply being alive? Technology isn't the enemy, but forgetting our true nature is. When we replace connection with simulation and wisdom with speed, we fall into the very trap Blavatsky tried to warn us about, a future where the soul is silenced beneath layers of artificial noise. So, what can we take away from all this? First, that it's not enough to be advanced, we must also be awake. As we move further into this digital age, we need to keep checking in with our values, our intentions, and our ability to remain grounded in reality. Ask yourself, who's shaping my mind? Am I thinking clearly and freely? Am I using technology, or is it using me? How do my actions align with compassion, balance, and truth? Blavatsky's words may sound old, but their meaning is more alive than ever. They call us to protect our minds from manipulation, to use science with wisdom, and to stay rooted in real, human, spiritual experience, because in doing so, we don't just safeguard the future of humanity, we keep our inner light from being dimmed. If this message touched something in you, leave a comment below with just one word: awake. It's a quiet way to say you're choosing clarity over confusion, truth over illusion. Let's light up the comment section with that word, awakand. Remind each other we're still here, still conscious, still real. 5. The root races theory. Helena Blavatsky's theory of the root races, as described in her monumental work, The Secret Doctrine, remains one of the most provocative and misunderstood aspects of her esoteric teachings. At its core, the theory outlines a spiritual evolution of humanity through 7 great epochs, or root races, each representing not physical races as we understand them today, but rather stages in humanity's journey through consciousness. Blavatsky insisted these were symbolic representations of humanity's inner growth, not ethnic or racial classifications, distinction often lost or distorted by later misinterpretations. She described the first root race as etheric beings, beings of pure energy, almost like spiritual blueprints, who lived in what she called the imperishable sacred land, a place beyond the physical realm, untouched by decay. This initial stage was about potential and purity, the beginning of a long journey into matter and back towards spirit. As the cycle progressed, the second root race, the Hyperboreans, took shape more tangible than the first, but still ethereal, dwelling in a now lost Arctic continent. These beings existed in a state of harmony with nature, undivided by ego, representing a time when humans were still deeply aligned with the Earth's original rhythms. Then came the Lemurians of the third root race, who marked humanity's descent into the physical world. With them, physical bodies began to form, and with the body came language, sexuality, and individuality. Although primitive by today's standards, this was a necessary stage akin to a child discovering its own will. The Lemurians were followed by the fourth root race, the fabled Atlanteans. These beings, according to Blavatsky, were technologically and psychically advanced. They had developed immense powers of the mind, but became corrupted by their own pride and misuse of knowledge. Their downfall, a massive cataclysm, echoes in the mythologies of many ancient cultures and serves as a warning about what happens when spiritual evolution is overshadowed by unchecked ambition. We, the current humanity, are the fifth root race, what Blavatsky called the Aryans, not in the racialized way later groups appropriated the term, but as a symbol of the intellectual and materially focused human. In this age, science has soared, but spiritual connection has withered. This is the stage of mind over heart, technology over wisdom. While we've built astonishing tools and systems, Blavatsky warned that our obsession with materialism would eventually lead to karmic consequence, ecological collapse, war, and fragmentation of societies, all of which seem eerily relevant in our current era. Blavatsky foresaw that after a period of global crisis, what she called a purification by fire and water, a sixth root race would emerge. This new humanity would no longer rely on rigid dogmas or material certainties, but would be guided by direct inner knowing. She described them as deeply intuitive beings who could hear the soul's voice with the same clarity we now hear spoken words. In this vision, humanity moves beyond ego and separation, developing a kind of collective consciousness. Strikingly, she envisioned technologies that would make thought transmission possible, a form of collective telepathy. In The Key to Theosophy, she wrote that words would become obsolete and that thoughts would flash directly from mind to mind. Today, we see uncanny parallels in projects like Neuralink, which aim to merge human consciousness with machines. These developments raise profound questions about where we're headed. Are we walking blindly into a future shaped only by data and machinery? Or are we also cultivating the spiritual wisdom to handle such power? Blavatsky's understanding of time was non-linear. She viewed time as a spiral, where each era is a repetition on a higher level, offering humanity the chance to evolve through the same fundamental lessons until we finally get it right. This concept offers a powerful lens through which to understand the repeating patterns of history: wars, greed, collapse, and rebirth. She warned that unless we shift our values, the karmic weight of our actions will force a reckoning. The world we see today, with environmental crises, rising conflicts, and societal disconnection, could very well be the pressure that brings about this transformation. And according to her writings, this shift might begin around 2025. That doesn't mean a magical transformation overnight, but a collective crossroads where choices made in consciousness, compassion, and connection could begin to shape a more enlightened humanity. Of course, it's vital to acknowledge that some aspects of her teachings have been misused and even carried dangerous implications, especially when interpreted literally or hierarchically. Later distortions, especially during the rise of fascism in the 20th century, twisted her symbolic concepts into racist ideologies, something she herself did not endorse. Today, we must be cautious and wise, separating the metaphorical wisdom from historical misuse. As we stand on the edge of significant technological and societal shifts, her message can be a mirror, urging us to remember that true evolution is not just about what we can build, but about who we are becoming. The journey from intellect to intuition, from domination to harmony, begins not in the stars, but in our daily lives, through kindness, mindfulness, and a deeper listening to the quiet voice within. End. As we reflect on Helena Blavatsky's bold and often unsettling prophecies, one truth becomes clear. These messages from the past aren't just history, they are a mirror to our present and a challenge to our future. Whether or not we believe in her visions, they ask us to look inward, question our direction, and consider what kind of world we're creating both outside and within. If her words are echoing in 2025, then perhaps it's not prophecy we're witnessing, but a call to awaken. Thank you for joining us on The Journey of Wisdom. If this video sparked something in you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming explorations into ancient teachings and modern truths. Until next time, stay mindful, stay compassionate, and keep walking the path of wisdom.